Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do, well, actually, I'm not sure what you can do. I'll tell you what I've been doing. I have been struggling for hours to cobble together a microphone stand that'll work because having gotten back home, as you can see, I can't find all of my stuff and everything is kind of insane. So I made a microphone stand out of a rice maker cover. Yay. Anyways, you can do this. That. But not just this. Because this is Airwindows GrindAmp. So I'm going to be kind of quick because everything is a little insane. I'm posting a plugin and getting all of my recording and video making studio together and so on. And here's what I will show you. We have got FireAmp here. And of course the raw guitar is this. Now, not everybody liked the sound of FireAmp. It's that way for a reason. It sounds like that because it's supposed to sound like that. But I did have another old school amp sim kind of thing that I put together, and that one is called GrindAmp. So, whereas FireAmp sounds like this, here's GrindAmp. And as you can see, we've got some controls. You can use your gain control, although the sound of this with very little distortion, I don't know if it's going to work for everybody. It's meant to go like this. And we've got the tone control as well, but it's not quite the same as the FireAmp tone control. All of these simulators are going to have very different tone controls for different purposes. So this one does this. Oh, let's put that back. Full bright. Full dark. And we can also dial back the gain a little bit. Brighter. Darker. And of course, dry wet has an effect. Dry wet acts very interestingly with these, and this is a particular case. It will bring in a little bit of the raw amp sound on top of the cab sound, while it is bringing in a little bit of the raw guitar sound on top of everything else. So that's weird. Nobody else does that. And it sounds like this. You got a little more articulation. You can go kind of bright this way. And then you'll also get the dry in here as well, like this. And then full wet is the most of the effect. Now the way this works is so unusual that it might find uses in other things like synthesizers and whatever. there's pretty much a wide range of not exactly ampy, but in the vicinity of ampy, but with a lot of presence. So something like this might find other uses besides just pretending to be a guitar amp. Well, there you have it. So Airwindows GrindAmp is an audio unit and VST2 plugin. It's available for Mac, PC, and Linux, and it is free because I am Patreon supported. So basically, I don't have to hit you up for money to pay for getting your hands on the actual plugin. If this seems like it's a useful thing to you, you can just use it with my blessing. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about the possible uses of this because, like you heard, although I've got a little reverb on there, it is mighty dry, it's mighty direct, but you know, people have used stuff like that in mixes. For instance, Def Leppard used stuff like that on their Hysteria album, which famously had like Tom Scholz's Rockmans in there. Now, this is not a Rockman sim. It's not meant to be anything like that. It doesn't have, for instance, the stereo chorus, although I just put out a stereo doubler, but it doesn't have things like the stereo chorus that one would get in trying to get the literal, like Tom Scholz, Boston, Def Leppard, Hysteria type sound. But this is doing the same category of thing. This is a amp sim that gives you a lot of flexibility over going into dry signals and a lot of flexibility over varying the distinctive little tone that it has. And consider it a sort of tone color, and it's the same kind of tone color that was used on, the classic album that I mentioned, where you're not actually using a mic'd amp and it's not really trying to be a mic'd amp so much as it's trying to produce sonority and aggression and a particular kind of distorted hit to the sound that's not going to be really full and get in the way of a lot of things. Like FireAmp in some ways was even more like that. FireAmp was very mid-rangey. GrindAmp is covering a wider range. It does have, it actually has undersampled speaker cabinet impulses, but they're kind of special. They are restricted speaker cabinet impulses, giving some of the tone color, but without the hangover and sustain. There's no real reverby quality about it. So it's a bizarre little hybrid between a bunch of different things. And it might find a place being used for something. People have used stuff like this for all kinds of things. For instance, Genesis got one of its drum machine sounds by running a drum machine, an old drum machine, into a tiny combo amp that was cranked up to the point where it was jumping off of the floor. And that's that sound. So GrindAmp, as FireAmp before it, can be used for that kind of thing. You can throw it on an element and it will not fuzz up things in the way a full-on mic'd amp in a reverby space would, but it's also not going to be quite as dry as just putting a clipper on it. It's a sort of part way in between, and if the tone coloring or the tone colorings you can get out of it, including that unusual dry-wet control, are useful to you, then hey, I hope you like it. I mentioned I'm supported by Patreon, and the idea that I've had for the Patreon is that you can, if one of my plugins is such that you would buy it, for the very high and intimidating price of $50. Then you keep it forever and lifetime support. Oh, and also you get the source code. That, granted, that's a very, not much, right? If you would buy that for $50, then please jump on my Patreon for $50 a year. If there's another plugin that you would buy for $50 within the last year that I did, then add that to the list if you can. I'm actually toying with the idea of taking away the $1 tier and stuff, just on the grounds of, in these times, if all you can come up with is $1, let me support you. I'm dead serious. Things are challenging these days for an awful lot of people. And this is one of the things that I can do, is develop you tools. I'm going to be working on a lot of things. I am hoping to have Console 8 coming out. And Console 8 is not going to be a hardware emulation. What is going to be a hardware emulation is something that I like to call doubly, but that's another story. And yeah, I'm working on a bunch of stuff. I'm back home so that I can kick into gear and start putting the new plugins together in a serious way. I may or may not be live streaming them. I don't know. We'll see. Everything's a little bit up in the air. Everything's a little chaotic, but my journey to Canada went pretty well, all things considered. And everybody who is important and relevant to that story is okay and fine and got through the stuff that they were needing to get through. I'm not going to tell you any more about that, but suffice it to say, it's been a really wild ride. And I wish I could tell you all of it, but I'm back where I can do some serious work. I think the next time I head to Canada, I'm going to be bringing more stuff like the retro computer that I developed plugins on, so that I can do all of the works there. I also think that the next time I get up to Canada, I will have that tiny, I'll show it to you, the tiny little mixer, the TX6, because I can travel with that. I can put it in my pocket and go on an airplane. And that'll be a nice MIDI controller, and that might be my final multi-channel recorder. It may or may not, it'll probably find uses as a mixer too, but honestly, I'm interested in other things about it. And I'll be putting out plugins to support it, because there's some things that it could probably do that I got a lot of work to do. I hope you like GrindAmp, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.